Good evening and welcome to the 31st episode of Cleveland Sports Realm. 31st in honor of the man with the greatest hair on the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jared Allen. That guy's got a hell of a fro. I wish I could have hair like that, honestly. But nonetheless, it is the 31st episode of Cleveland Sports Realm. We're here in our usual assigned spots. Me here, Kevin there, Derek over there. Again, as always, we can see him. You can't. So we're going to get into some things here this evening. But first of all, I just want to do a little housekeeping. Usually we've been doing these on Wednesday evenings, but in the words of Frank Sinatra, I'm going to start spreading the news. And I'm leaving today, or I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm heading to New York for the Guards-Yankees game at Yankee Stadium. I'll be there tomorrow night. I'll be in the building. So we are recording a night early because I'll be going to New York, New York. So we'll get to the Guardians here as they have a big series. Like I said, I'm looking forward to being there live in the Bronx tomorrow for that. We'll get to them down the road. We're actually going to start with a little bit of orange and brown talk on and off the field, Kevin.
Sure.
And I think we will begin with off the field first, and that's why I have my phone right here because I did not want to get this messed up. Daryl Ryder, as of 4 hours ago, we now have 3 separate plans on how Ohio will provide the Browns with the $600 million for the Brook Park project. Governor DeWine, he wants to double the gaming company tax, create stadium construction fund for the state. The House, they want to use $600 million in bonds, and the Senate of the state wants to create state stadium construction fund from unclaimed funds fund. So
the Haslams are getting what they want.
Either way, it looks like they're going to get that money one of 3 ways. To me, I think the idea I like it the best is either the $600 million in bonds. I don't know if I like creating a state stadium construction fund. I think that would actually benefit everybody, though, because the Bengals are going to they would be able to pull from that fund depending how deep the pockets of that fund were. And then, obviously, the horseshoe, too. They're going to need stuff too. I mean, that stadium's the oldest out of all. That stadium was built in World War I times. So
yeah, I think I like that idea too because it's not just Cleveland focused. To what your point is, that gets the Bengals involved, gets Ohio State involved, and I'm sure that obviously would get, to a lesser degree, the Akrons, the Kent States, the other random
the state
schools.
Universities.
Yes,
sure.
Exactly.
The governor's idea to double the gaming company tax, and that's like the gambling tax. I don't know if I like that. I mean, we're already getting hit with taxes so many other places, man. People don't want to be taxed on their sports gambling wins, and I get it. You need the money. So Daryl Ryder also, and you could follow him on Twitter at Daryl Ryder, or I believe Ryder Wrong Fan at RUITER Wrong spelled WRONG and then fan. He's been all over this, so he says. He's been interacting with fans this evening about it as we record this. But one other thing that he says is here is that just announced the Senate budget bill includes, quote, a Cuyahoga County permissive for the sin tax increase to be placed on the ballots for voters to vote on again. Also, funds would be available to all 3 teams regardless of where they play in the county. So it looks like that could be another way if they add more to the sin tax, which is obviously your tax on tobacco, alcohol, all those kind of things. So it looks like now the Browns are going to get this money, as you pointed out. It's just how exactly are they going to get it? We'll see.
Well, can I ask you something real quick? When it comes to opening up that fund for the state stadium bucket that you were referring to, wouldn't that just be taxes anyway?
Probably. That's what the Ohio Senate wants to do. So the
right.
problem is you have multiple different political angles to this. You have what the state wants to do, and then, of course, you have what the county wants to do, and the county does not give a rat's you-know-what about
the Bengals and Ohio State.
Yes.
And, yeah.
They're focused solely on how we're going to do this for the Browns and, obviously, the lakefront. Darryl also says Browns road to Brook Park for the Browns looks like this. Senate vote on budget bill with amendments. Conference committee handles reconciliation from House and Senate negotiate differences in two versions of the budget. This is probably how and where the $600 million in funding from will ultimately be decided. Final version will go to Governor DeWine for a signature. So a lot of stuff going on there.
And at least we know that there's options on how they're going to get this done.
Right. I'm no political expert, and but we know that politicians often talk about, and I don't want to get too deep in the road of politics here, but all three of us in this room know politicians a lot of times talk right out of their ass. And, whether they're actually going to do any of this remains to be seen. Obviously, they all have different ideas, and, politicians, getting a bunch of them in the room also involves getting a lot of big egos into the room. And so
a lot of dollars thrown back and forth.
Absolutely. So this will be interesting to see how this all breaks down. And obviously we have been following this very extensively and will continue to do so for you, the listener. Now let's actually talk about the Browns on the field. OTAs are ongoing. And yesterday they had the annual Browns charity golf outing. I believe it was at Westwood Country Club. I think. I'm not 100% positive. I hate saying things that might be wrong. I think it was there. But either way, several Browns players were there and coaches. And Joel Bitonio seemed to be very, very excited about the idea of going back to the 2020 and 21 offense. He talked about it with local Browns media extensively. I am with Joel. That's where the Browns found their most success. They derailed everything for the Albatross, and it resulted in nothing but failure offensively for the last couple of years. And even you can say, okay, well, they had a hot offensive streak in 2023 that would have been with Joe Flacco. Well, because guess what they did? They went back to running the Kevin offense. Then they bring in Ken Dorsey. Last year was an absolute disaster. I don't know if that was Kevin Stefanski's decision. Something tells me that came from above. Now it looks like we're going back to Kevin's offense, Kevin's playbook, and it seems like the players are all excited, and except probably the Albatross, but who gives a crap what he thinks anyhow?
Well, even Joel Bitonio had said, they were interviewing him the other day, and he had basically said that he was mulling retirement this year, and I don't know if that news had come out beforehand or afterwards, but he did say that he got in the mindset of, I want to play football again, I want to have at least one more year, and I want to do it for the Cleveland Browns. Now, to your point, Jerome, with the Albatross and, making sure that we have the right quarterback under center for this team that can actually execute that offense. That quarterback was obviously Baker in the 2020 to 2021 seasons, and then Joe Flacco in 2023. We saw Brissett do it pretty well, I thought, in 2022.
Yes.
So basically, as long as we have a quarterback that's not turning the ball over, I would even say 10 to 12 interceptions. If it's less than 15, I think you can have a manageable year with anybody under center in this offense, realistically, whether that's Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, or either of the rookies that we brought in. I know the fan base loves one over the other, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out, and wrists up. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this quarterback competition plays out, because at the end of the day, I think the entire season's success rests upon the quarterback, as it does for all 32 teams.
We're not breaking any news here on the CSR when we tell you it's the most important position in all of pro sports. Yep. It really is. And, Kevin Stefanski seemed excited yesterday. I mean, is that excitement genuine? It's hard to tell. Obviously, he's not going to go to the Browns charity golf outing where everybody's in a good move in the middle of June or early June.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough out there.
Yeah, everybody's playing for a good cause, playing 18 holes. He's not going to go there and bring out the mood and say, well, OTAs have sucked and the offense looks miserable. So, you got to take what he did say, some of it, you got to read the tea leaves. And I
take it with a grain of salt.
And I thought reading the tea leaves from the future, in my opinion, Hall of Fame left guard of Joel Bitonio was basically, we were good, and then we changed everything for one guy. We sucked, and now we realized, hey, if we're going to be good again on offense, we got to go to what worked for us.
And we heard this from some beat reporters last year about them interviewing anonymous Browns players and them saying basically, well, this is exactly what happens when you uproot everything that was working and switch it to fit one player as opposed to fitting the players around everybody else to make the system cohesive. So, yeah, we heard about it last year. It sounds like the Browns are finally coming to their senses over the last 3 years and going back to what had worked for them specifically, what worked for the coaching staff specifically, and their players. Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, I've read pretty good things about what they've been doing in OTAs with their competition that they've been having in the backfield. And this is a system that does rely heavily on those zone schemes. And Quinshon Judkins, was there anybody better almost in college football last year than him at reading the zones and going through the tackles?
I'd be hard-pressed to find one, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's exactly what would be fitting our offense. Now, again, quarterback, take care of the football. Let's ground and pound and get back to the Cleveland Browns football that we knew and loved in 2020.
Right, exactly. And, if you look at it, this team, I don't think anybody's sitting here who's realistic about it and thinks the Browns are going to be great this year, because I think that's going to be really hard to do, and they're just talent deficient in too many areas. But I'm looking for a team that's not going to be like last year and competitive. Just be in games. Give yourself a chance. There were so many games last year that were over long before the clock hit zero, and that's frustrating too. Look, if you're being realistic about it, and I know some people are going to be unreal. Oh, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to go this. Yeah. No, none of that's going to happen probably, most likely, if you're being logical. But can they be competitive? Can they have an offense that's not statistically one of the worst since the AFL-NFL merger like they had last year? Kevin, they couldn't score the ball ever last year.
Well, that's what it seemed like. I remember us sitting down here. I believe it was after the Saints game, so it would have been around maybe week 12 or 13,
so
somewhere
we're looking
in there.
November, December.
Yeah, and I remember us saying that it had been a few weeks straight of almost non-competitive football, and it wasn't the fact that they stunk. And I remember I went on a little bit of a rant there after that Saints game. It's not whether you stink or not; it's whether you're actually giving us effort out there. We loved those early 2010 Browns teams, not because they were good, but because they just busted their butt. They stunk, but their bodies were flying around out there. That's
Absolutely.
all. That's really all it takes in the city of Cleveland to at least. I mean, Matthew Dellavedova is a folk hero here for what he did in the 2015 NBA Finals, and we didn't even win.
I completely agree. And excuse me, I'm a little parched.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But it's just going back, just the hustle and effort. It's something that we've always, even going back to, who was that defensive end? I want to say it's Matt Roth, but it wasn't. There was a defensive end that used to play.
Chris Gokong?
No, but there was a defensive end / line, Scott Solomon.
Yeah.
He had like a 5-game stretch where he was just running off the line. He'd be in the backfield. Didn't make a ton of sacks or a ton of plays, but you could see that he was moving his butt out there, and the fan base ended up embracing him for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of all that and effort, and, I see some people are upset Myles Garrett isn't at OTAs. He's with his new fresh squeeze in Tokyo and that. I don't care that Myles Garrett isn't at OTAs. I don't know about you. I don't really care. I guess as a team leader and the highest paid player on the team, should he be there? Probably. But at the end of the day, Myles Garrett doesn't need to go to OTAs. Guys who are like Quinshon Judkins and, rookies and Shedeur Sanders, of course, all the young quarterbacks, and Kenny Pickett, guys that are trying to prove themselves. Myles Garrett, in my opinion, I've said this before on the podcast, and I'll say it again, I'm sure. He can hang him up today, and he's in Canton.
Sure.
He doesn't need to be at OTA. Would it be nice if he was there? Sure. Not going to happen.
Sure, but this debate's been going on for a few years now within this fan base on whether Myles Garrett is a leader or not, and they throw the captain C on his jersey every single year for the last 6-7 years
since 2019, I believe.
And you're not showing up to OTAs to lead these guys. It's not about, go overseas, have fun, do whatever, go on these trips or whatever. We're into football season now, buddy. I don't care if it's voluntary or not. We gave you a record-setting contract. You're supposed to be the best player, the best defensive player in football, captain of this football team, and you're missing volunteer activities. I genuinely think it's unacceptable.
So we see this from a completely different perspective, right? Clearly.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it is what it is. I don't really care. I think, you get to a certain point in your career, and it's acceptable to miss him. That's the way I look at it.
It's one thing to be at practice and get, the Veterans Day off that the Joe Thomases, I'm sure Joel Bitonio is getting them, things like that. It's one thing for
Myles
that to
Garrett
happen.
gets them too.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. It's another to completely miss the entire day of what's going on and not even be there for the team.
Yeah, I guess so. Now, one guy who, in my opinion, he's on his last lightning rod shot in the NFL. Deontay Johnson, for him to miss OTAs is, to me, now I look at a guy like that.
Yeah, sure.
And I say that's unacceptable. First of all, you couldn't catch COVID if you tried. I thought giving you a deal was stupid. And then on top of that, you don't show up to OTAs like you are some type of Myles Garrett, Joe Thomas. Like, dude, you stink. You're literally on your last breath ditch effort in the NFL, and you're gonna miss OTAs. To me, that's unacceptable. That's where I'll agree with you, and I could see it from that prism. Through the view of Myles, though, not a big deal to me.
Yeah, but the thing is, looking back at, I believe it was 2019 or 2020, OBJ had missed some of these, and we had almost grown to accept that because it was Baker Mayfield that we were expecting to be at every single activity and things like that, and he was just a receiver who wasn't actually leading the team. Myles Garrett is the face of this franchise right now. You have to be at OTAs, in my opinion.
Okay. I guess I could see that, but still, I'm not going to change my opinion on it. Like Deontay Johnson, though, dude, you have no, this is it.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartly, too.
Yeah.
Like the guys that are on their last-ditch effort in the NFL, the rookies, the younger players, they all got to be there.
Right. I think, you're seeing, obviously, Joe Flacco will take sort of a leadership role of the offense. It seems to me from the early going here, maybe I'm just reading the tea leaves, but it seems like Jerry Jeudy's going to have a role as a leader on this offense, and I'm good with that.
Yeah, it sounded like it. I mean, he even shouted out his former – I mean, he said when he got to Cleveland last year that he had looked up to Amari Cooper heavily and was very excited about playing with him, and it seems like he's taking on, or at least trying to take on, a little bit of an Amari Cooper role here, and he had even shouted out Amari Cooper with the Joe Flacco praise, and I think we shouted that out last week.
Yes, we did. We made mention of that in last week's episode.
Yeah.
Go back and check that out if you haven't yet. And no, I'm glad to see that. One other Browns thing I had to bring up was Jed Wills is going to sit out, and I started laughing when I read that one. If you are a long-time loyal listener to this podcast, you know that I had no time and no use and can't stand Jedrick Wills. Kevin by no means was a fanboy, but he had a little bit of respect for Jed Wills.
I just basically said he's not as bad as the fan base makes him out to be. I thought he was an average, slightly below average left tackle in the league. I think, yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the effort plays, though, going back to what we were just talking about a couple minutes ago, that was what lost the fan base. It didn't matter. I saw the lack of effort some plays, but I still saw, I thought, more better plays than bad. But the effort's what lost the fan base.
Yeah, and then if you started breaking down the film, the guy got worse each year.
Yeah, he did.
And now, if you miss why we're bringing this up, is Jedrick Wills is, quote, from Jordan Schultz, NFL insider for Fox Sports. Jedrick Wills is going to sit out the season and prepare for next year. Buddy, you're going to sit out. You're going to sit out for the rest of your life. First of all, you stink.
I think he'll get one more opportunity. And the reason I say that is because he's a first-rounder. And he only played his first 5 years in the league. We've seen the other first-rounders that didn't make it get other chances. Even the Browns gave Calvin Pryor III a chance at one point.
Yeah.
You see these first-rounders get these random... Jahan Dotson's still in the league.
Yeah,
He's not really a name anymore.
I don't see it only because the film that Jedrick Wills put out there last year, it's vomit-inducing.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be given, a starting shot. I think he might give I think he might be given an opportunity to compete with another guy or another two guys if somebody's right tackle or left tackle isn't solved.
His best hope would be a tryout, OTA type of. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, Jedrick Wills isn't going to play, and in my opinion, I don't know if he'll ever play again.
Is it officially that he's not going to play this year? I saw he was thinking about not playing entirely, but was at least going to sit out some of the season to recover. And then if he wasn't signed, I think by a certain week, he would just sit out the remainder of the year to recover.
Yeah, the report I read is he's not planning on playing at all this season.
Okay. I heard something different this morning then. Okay.
So, either way...
I don't think he's playing this year.
I don't know who the hell would want him around. He's not... He's lazy. Okay? He doesn't work hard. He doesn't work to get better. The whole business decision thing last year, that put a poor taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Yeah.
And his business decision resulted in him now apparently making another business decision And soon there's going to be no business for you to conduct in the league. You're going to be done. You're out of it.
And on the other end of that, a different Browns tackle we can talk about, somebody who has been putting in the work and showing up, and you can see it in his frame now, is Dawan Jones. He's lost. I read that he's lost like almost 50 pounds.
Yeah, good for him. He needed to lose weight.
He did.
Quite
He absolutely
frankly.
did.
And I, from working down there in the past, I was told that, and I can't say who said, but he was, a source told me he was a frequent visitor on a daily occurrence to the Bagley Road McDonald's. You can't be an NFL tackle and eat a Big Mac every day. It doesn't work like
Kenny
that.
Britt used to do that, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a big Burger King guy.
Burger King was what it was.
The Front Street Burger King, which is no longer in business.
No, it's not.
Talking about local burrito establishments. But, no, Dawan Jones, the talent's always been there. It's been getting him on the mental track, and it seems it's very early. I mean, today as we record this, I believe it's June 2nd or June 3rd. And to me, what is it? June 2nd or 3rd?
We're recording this Tuesday night, June 3rd.
Okay, June 3rd. It's very, very early. We got a long way to go before the Browns kick this season off against the Cincinnati Bengals. But the mindset seems right, and sometimes it takes some guys a little bit longer. Maybe in the third year, he's finally got that giant oversized head screwed on that not-so-oversized body right.
Yeah, we can hope because, it's only a matter of time. I'm going to knock on wood, but we're going to see a Jack Conklin injury at some point this year, if he even plays. So we need Dawan Jones on this team, and we need him to be productive.
Well, to me, Conklin came back, and it didn't get talked about enough because the Browns were so awful in the second half of the year. Well, really the whole year. But when he came back in the second half of the year,
played well.
He played, I thought, his best football maybe ever as a Cleveland Brown.
Oh, I don't know. 2020, he was pretty elite.
He was pretty damn good last year.
Yeah, he was great last year for us, in the time that he played, absolutely. I just feel like in 2020, I thought his presence was more felt. But that might be just me looking back on a team that was good compared to a team that was bad, that I noticed him more out there.
Right.
So, yeah, but Jack Conklin, he was a guy that, ironically, the Browns actually traded down from in 2016.
Then picked him in.
They traded down from 2, who was originally Wentz, to 8, and they traded down from 8, and then Conklin was taken at 8, and then we settled for Corey Coleman that year. But we ended up with Jack Conklin anyway, so it ended up at some point coming back.
To my initial point here, Kevin, and I think if you look at it, your best case scenario would be, your best 2 talent-wise tackles would be, your best scenario would be Jack on the right and Dawan on the left. Because before Dawan did get hurt last year, even though he was so overweight, when he got that season-ending knee injury in New Orleans last year, the previous couple weeks, he had been showing good signs and good stuff and putting good stuff on tape at left tackle. So it was a super, super microscopic sample size. But if he can somehow turn that into an entire season, your best option would absolutely be Dawan at left, Jack at right, with the guards being Teller and Batonio, and of course Ethan at the center.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely they go this route, but I could see them switching it too as well and having Conklin on the left, Dawan on the right. Only reason I say this, Conklin's got more left tackle experience. Granted, it was all at Michigan State. He hasn't really touched left tackle in the NFL. So because of that, I doubt they'd make that move. He's played 10 years at right tackle in the NFL now.
Right. They're not
going to end up moving him. But me personally, if I were the coach, I would at least think about that and see if Jack would be open to that because of his previous experience at the position. I also think it's going to be interesting to see how Tevin Jenkins ropes into this. I know he's listed as a guard, but he's a player that when he was healthy for Chicago was a great guard. He came out, I believe, as a tackle from Oklahoma State. And he's a bigger frame. I believe he's 6'5", 6'6", over 300. He's a guy I think that we could see in there at some point as well.
Yeah, I think so too, but I think that was more of a depth signing looking at it.
I think it's just one of those jack-of-all-trade offensive linemen. If any of the guards, if any of the tackles go out, you can throw Jenkins in there.
Right. So yeah, depth signing essentially. Sure. I think, your idea of moving Jack to left, maybe if this was 5 years ago, sure. But I think a guy who's played an entire position for a decade plus in the NFL, you're not going to ask him to change and learn something new in his 11th year, 10th year, or whatever.
No, I completely get that. I just feel like...
And also, the fact that Dawan played there last year, showed you kind of what they wanted to do for the future, and now the future's now. And thank God Jedrick Wills is nowhere near 76 Lou Groza Boulevard, and Dwan and Jack are, and I think they should have a very formidable offensive line.
Yeah, where do you think our offensive line ranks now? Obviously, if you're looking back on this, 2020 through 2022, we're probably talking about, a top 5 offensive line in the entire NFL from left tackle through right tackle. Where do you think, age has got to be factored in at some point when it comes to actually looking at this unit stacked up against the rest of the other 31 teams in the NFL. I still confidently think we have a top 10 offensive line in the league.
Yeah, I agree with that. Wyatt Teller was not as good at pass pro last year as he had been in years prior. He slipped, and he's battled a lot of injuries. Joel, to me, is probably still, even entering, his 12th year?
Came out in 14.
Yeah, so it'd be 12th year.
Yep.
Joel, to me, is still, I think, the most complete, best offensive lineman on this team.
Oh, I think it's without a doubt, too.
So I think you're solid there. Ethan Pocic has been probably one of Andrew Berry's really good moves that doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
And that was just one of those signings that was just kind of a flyer to get competition in there.
Then they realized, hey, this guy's pretty good, and they got him extended cheaply, which was smart.
Well, and the plan that year was to actually have Nick Harris start at center, if you remember, and he got injured in the preseason.
Yeah.
And they had to pivot to Pocic, and he just took the job and never looked back with it. And I never thought he was bad when he was in Seattle either. I never understood why a team never actually came to him with a legitimate offer the offseason prior to coming from Seattle.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Cleveland.
No, I agree with that. So that'll all be interesting. And, training camp is not that far away. It's crazy to say, but when we sit here on June 3rd, they'll be getting ready to get geared up. And then, I'm sure that all the psycho Browns fans like me, you, and everybody else in this city will be sitting there tracking all the Shedeur Sanders passes and Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, I guess, too. I can't believe he's here, but him as well. And
speaking of those quarterbacks, how do you think the 4 of them are actually stacking up against each other right now? Like, what's your gut telling you for start of the season? Who's going to be leading this team under center week 1?
I still think it's Joe Flacco, and I know that Kevin Stefanski's not going to commit to that now. Joe Flacco's not going to commit to that now. No, Tommy Reese, anybody involved with the offense and the quarterbacks doesn't seem to be wanting to say that. But to me, Joe Flacco makes the most sense. I don't think he's got 17 in him. I still think, as I sit here on June 3rd, Tuesday, June 3rd, I really believe what's ultimately going to happen, and maybe I'm way off base, this is just my personal opinion. I don't have any sources telling me this, nothing.
Okay.
What I believe is going to happen is Joe Flacco is going to he's going to start the year. Kenny Pickett is going to be that guy who's going to be moved when somebody gets a major injury in training camp. And I'm not wishing injuries upon anybody. We know it happens every training camp in the NFL. It's part of the league. Kenny Pickett, Browns could get some low-level 7th-round conditional pick or something for him. I don't know.
I don't think they would do that, though. I don't think the Browns would do it because you traded a 5th for him. I don't think Andrew Berry would accept the 7th back and just basically accept that when we traded for this guy, we were trading 2 rounds down for no reason at all. I think Andrew Berry would look at it that way as opposed to, hey, we're going to get something for this guy. He's going to look at it as we just lost a 5th-round pick for nothing.
To me, the best-case scenario would be Kenny Pickett lights up the meaningless preseason.
Maybe you get the Saints calling. I think we mentioned that a couple weeks ago, I want to say.
Yeah, that would be the best-case scenario. Then Joe, to draw out my theory here, or to finish out my theory here, Joe starts the year, and I think he gives you maybe 7-8 games by that point. The Browns are probably either out of it or Joe probably has nothing left in the tank. He's turning the ball over too much. And then I think you go to one of the rookies. If it was me, I'd go to Shedeur. I don't know what they're going to do, but that's probably the way I see this playing out.
Yeah, the way I would do it is kind of almost exactly like what you're saying. I personally would start Flacco, go Pickett as the backup, and then obviously have the rookies just battle for the 3rd-string job right now and see where that takes off. The
problem is, in my opinion, sorry to cut you off, you're not putting either of those rookies on your practice squad, so where do you go from there?
Maybe they carry 4 of them, dude. Maybe they do. It wouldn't be the logical thing, but maybe that's what they do. Maybe we've seen this team do some absurd things in the past. Maybe they seriously do that.
I don't know. That seems pretty pretty preposterous.
I think it seems preposterous too.
But the Browns are known for preposterous.
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to say for my prediction for the beginning of the year. I think Kenny Pickett's going to be the starter. I don't know what's going to go on with Joe Flacco. And I know this negates almost everything I said when we traded for Kenny Pickett, because I looked at you. We had an over-under 2.5 game start bet. You said over, and I said under. I had 2 or less. You had 3 or more.
At the time, they didn't even have Joe yet, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And you had said this. You said that he would start 3 or more. I think you're right on that now, looking back at it. And the reason I say that too, obviously they've got draft capital invested in him by trading for him. But isn't it such a Browns thing to start a former Steelers quarterback over an absolute folk hero in this town?
Oh yeah, and
like, if you want to piss off this fan base more than you already have, go start a Steelers quarterback over Joe Flacco and see what happens. And I think they're going to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Obviously, there's so much. I mean, to be honest with you, they're still running around in shorts and T-shirts, So
right.
Who knows? I'm not getting crazy. I see some people are charting, what Shador's doing versus Gabriel versus Joe versus Kenny. I'm not buying into all that.
I have heard from just about everybody that Shador has looked miles better than Dylan Gabriel, though. Like, every single report has said that.
I could have told anybody. You could have told you. I mean, he's a much better quarterback. I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, he was a better quarterback coming out. There's no question about it in my mind.
Again,
people
had a great draft, in our opinion. The one blemish is, what were you thinking of? The Dylan Gabriel stuff just blows my mind.
Well, it's just the thing about it that stinks, and we've said it in the past, so I don't want to harp on it too much. And I'm probably saying this because I am a little bit of a homer for this university, but for a team in the Browns that does kind of need some depth pieces at safety specifically. You had a ball hawking safety from Notre Dame and Xavier Watts still available when you texted Dylan, or when you drafted Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, they did text him.
Yeah, they did. They called and texted.
Yeah. So no, I mean that was a bad.
It was confusing at the time too. Like, that's one of those picks that I look at and I'm thinking about in Browns history in general. Whenever I've seen a draft pick of theirs and been absolutely confused by, the most confused draft pick, or one of them, is definitely the Dylan Gabriel pick, end of round 3. Like, I just didn't feel like it made sense in the moment with all the quarterbacks available. Obviously, there was Shador available. There was Will Howard, who a lot of people are still high on in the NFL in general, and somehow he fell to the 6th round. Like, there were quarterbacks that fit this team and this mold and this city better than Dylan Gabriel.
100%. All right. Let's move off the Browns. Let's talk about the NBA Finals. I guess you could say the Western Conference. Not much of a surprise. I mean, in general, maybe because a lot of people kind of doubted them when it came to playoff time, and they kind of rolled through.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
Closest they got was Game 7 against the Nuggets.
Yeah, absolutely. And they kind of did steamroll their way there. The Oklahoma City Thunder representing the Western Conference versus the Indiana Pacers with just an exceptional run to the NBA Finals out of the Eastern Conference. I'm not giving the Cavs any flowers for losing in 5 now, or the Knicks for losing in 6. I think both those teams, talent-wise, were better than Indiana, but on paper. But it doesn't matter on paper. Indiana played way better. So what do you think going into the finals? Is the day this episode releases, the finals will begin that evening.
You want my prediction?
Yeah, well, just your overall thoughts on the series.
Well, I mean, obviously to your point, the Thunder steamrolled. The Pacers took care of business against the Knicks. I'm really looking forward to seeing the matchup between the Pacers and the Thunder, and I'm more so looking forward to seeing the matchup between Halliburton and SGA. I think it's going to be really interesting. Both of these teams just have, the guard that makes everything happen, and then a bunch of people that just fly around and play amazing defense. And obviously the Thunder have more star power with Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. Lou Dort does his thing. And then obviously Isaiah Hartenstein's been a great addition for that team as well, and we saw exactly what the Pacers can do. What's funny is I've taken the Pacers to lose every single series that they have had this postseason. I had them losing in 6 to the Bucks, losing in 5 to us, and then losing in 5 to the Knicks. And I think I'm going to keep it going, and I'm going to have the Pacers losing in 5 against the Thunder. I just think the Thunder, too much star power, and they play too similarly as well. that I think the star power at this point would outweigh that. I think the only significant advantage, and I don't even know how significant of an advantage it is for the Pacers, would be Rick Carlisle and the experience that he has coaching championship teams before. But I just think, like I said, the star power of the Thunder, obviously Daigneault's been a great coach the last few years for them as well. This is kind of his moment to either put up or shut up, and I'm taking the Thunder to win in 5.
I'm going to actually take the Indiana Pacers in 7.
To win it all?
Yeah,
Wow.
I've seen enough. I've seen
Really?
enough. They dominated the Cavs. I mean, they beat the Knicks in 6. Both those teams I thought on paper were better than them. And the one thing that I think is key here, Pascal Siakam really didn't do much against the Cavaliers. That was a completely different story against New York. He really played well and exposed the Knicks defensively that whole series. Nembhard's been awesome these playoffs. Neesmith's been awesome these playoffs. Rick Carlisle knows how to get business done when he gets here. I like Indiana. Maybe it's just because I've seen more of them this playoffs on a consistent basis. Being that my team, the Cavaliers, are in the Eastern Conference, I saw every second of that series, and then I watched a good chunk or percentage of the series against New York. I have seen bits and pieces of the Thunder. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert and say I've seen them nearly as much as Indiana, so it might be, what my 4 eyes have seen, in that sort of deal. But I really think Indiana has what it takes, and I think they're going to win it all.
I think that's interesting. I would love to see that, just because it would be such an almost unprecedented story, because they weren't even looked at the beginning of the year of even being considered as a finals possibility, really. Like, everybody thought, like, yeah, they made it to the conference finals last year. We feel like the Cavs are going to be better. Celtics are still there. We were expecting the Knicks to be better than they were because they were banged up, obviously, last year. So a lot of people still had the Knicks not even considered for having like home court advantage coming into this playoffs, and now they're representing the East in the finals. I think it's unbelievable. And I heard a point this morning from Anthony Lima on 92.3. Again, this is Tuesday. Are we moving away from the small ball era? I think we totally are. I mean, both these teams are represented with 2 bigs. They have a guard that makes the entire offense happen, and then they just surround them with good defenders and good shooters and guys that hustle. That's what these teams are built on.
We could be phasing out of that. Absolutely.
I mean, it had a nice little 5-year stretch, roughly. Would you say? I mean, it probably started in 2017.
So, yeah, let's say 7 years.
2017, 18.
7-8 year stretch. Yeah. But no, I think that's a very good point. I didn't even think about that. It didn't cross my mind, but it's very true, because look at the teams that got through the playoffs. They have huge bigs down low in Holmgren and Turner. And Turner played very well in that.
And then Siakam and Hartenstein.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very good point. But I like Indiana. We'll obviously keep you updated on that as the NBA Finals are getting underway. And all the teams that we heard about, I'm not just going to single us out. All these teams that so-called experts talked about, the Cavaliers, the Lakers, the Knicks,
the Celtics,
the Celtics, the Nuggets, nowhere to be found. And here are the Indiana Pacers, and they are proudly there, and they're going to win this finals.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. I don't see it happening. I've got Thunder in 5. I hope it goes at least 6, though. I hope this is at least a 6-game series. But again, I got Thunder in 5.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, there is a theme going on here, though, of you just being dead wrong about this Indiana team.
Oh, so yeah, I've been wrong every single series they've been in.
We'll see what happens.
I just don't envision them raising the Larry O'Brien.
We'll see what happens. All right, well, let's flip gears and get into baseball, and then give you some odds and ends, and then we'll get out of here. Let's talk about the Guardians last week. We talked about it last week. We went to the first game of the homestand, and then courtesy of our buddy the clown who's appeared once on this podcast, Phil Sprons, we were able to go to the last game of the homestand on Sunday. It was good to have him back in town and be able to do that. That was nice. A nice 4-2 win against the Angels.
Yep.
So they go 3-3 on the homestand, still treading water, doing all right. But, Kevin, the damn Tigers just won't lose.
Yeah, they won't. And I don't know what it is with that team. I mean, obviously I do. They're just a great fundamental baseball team. They've had players that weren't playing well for them last year step up. We've mentioned, the Torkelsons and the Javi Baez's that have stepped up for that team. And the players that were so good for them last year have continued to be good. I saw Kerry Carpenter had a 3-home run game the other night. You just got players stepping up at every level for that ball club, and it's going to be hard to outpace them right now.
Right, absolutely. And the best thing that can keep happening is if they're not going to lose to anybody else and you're going to just tread water against everybody else, you got to keep beating them head to head. And there is we talked about it last week. There's sort of a Brown Steelers from the mid-2000s mental block there. When the Tigers see the red and blue roll into town into Comerica, or whether it's here at Progressive Field, they just start playing different baseball and they play against the rest of the league. And I think it still stems to that domination that we had over them that lasted a better part of a decade. And I look at it and logically I say they are a better baseball team than us. And it doesn't make sense that we should have went to Comerica and took 3 out of 4, but that's exactly what we did. And then, the Angels got off to a real hot start. They've cooled off. You did what you should have done against them and took 2 out of 3.
Yep.
The Dodgers, you're happy to just get a win in that series.
I was
honestly.
happy to get one there.
Yeah, get one there. And now there's another big one. They're in a meaty part of the schedule right now, no question about it. And now, as we sit here on Tuesday night, they are in the Bronx playing the Yankees. As I mentioned, I'll be there for the game 2 tomorrow. And I'm so happy because the game I'm going to is at Rodon, who we never hit, or Max Fried, who looks like he's well on his way to winning a Cy Young this year. I get to see Clark Schmidt pitch for the Yankees tomorrow, which is good because that's a guy we typically hit, a guy who Jose Ramirez hit a 3-run homer off earlier.
Yep.
And that leads me to my next point. Jose Ramirez, we had discussed this the other day at the ballpark when we were there. He's had insane hot stretches in his career. Is this one of the? I mean, it's hard.
It's got to be the hottest I've ever seen him.
Is it? Are we recency bias by saying that? Because 2017 he had some insane ones where he carried the ball club. I don't know because off the top of my head, I'm just gonna say it's one of the top 3. I mean, he batted .384 in the month of May. That's ridiculous. And so, this is a pretty inept offense most nights, and it's coming at a time where. He started kind of pedestrian in April, and you thought, you not to be negative, but you always think, oh no, I mean, he is 32 years old.
When's it going to start?
When are you going to start seeing the back?
Yeah.
When is he going to make the turn, get the hot dog at the clubhouse, and start going on the back 9? And then in May, he basically told everybody to, blank off. I'm not going anywhere. Hit .384. The power started coming. We started seeing more home runs. The defense is vastly improved because it was pretty awful in April. And I think
it was.
This is a guy who, I mean, thank God that he's doing what he's doing because the offense isn't really coming from any other places.
No, it's not. And I will say that I do think I will solidify, I think this is the hottest that I've ever seen Jose Ramirez. One, because he's never gone on a hit streak like he did. Was it 21 games that it ended at?
Yeah.
21-game hit streak. And within that hit streak, we had the most important series of the entire year against those damn Tigers that we were just talking about. And he was a key contributor in that series, the main contributor in that series, you could argue. So yeah. I would say without a doubt, Jose Ramirez, this has been the hottest that I've ever seen him, or that I can at least remember.
Yeah. I mean, I do know in 2017, I think he had a 19-game hit streak. Now, the on-base, obviously, that streak is still, we'll see. Right now, it's still going into tonight's game at Yankee Stadium. It's still in play. We'll see if he's able to carry that one on.
Which do want to give Tanner Bybee some credit just now. So I know this is Tuesday, but just got out of a bases-loaded jam with 2 outs.
Yeah.
So that was nice. What was that, the 5th inning?
I believe we're in the 6th from what I can see. Yeah.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, we have it on in front of us, but it's not
5th
on
just ended.
Okay, that was the 5th. Not on a very big screen. We're going to the top of the 6th, down 1-0. I think this Yankees series, knowing that you have to go against Rodon, who you never hit well, some folks may remember when Roberto Perez had his back foot kind of sticking out. Thank God, because it broke up a perfect game against us back in 2021. This guy's always dominated us for the better part of his whole career. And then you got Fried on Thursday. So to me, tomorrow you have to win that game because no matter what, you can't get swept. And we just talked about it. The Tigers aren't losing. You're already 6.5 back. I know that you're still are holding the top spot in the American League wild card as of this recording, but Kevin, you still want the division to be in play.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not going to consider the division. You know how I am when it comes to this. I'm not going to consider the division out of play until we're like 10 plus games behind and there's about 40, 50 games left. Maybe even 60. Once we're past the 100 game mark and we're 10 games behind, I'll consider it basically almost out of reach. So I'm not going to panic just yet. I think we have about 40 games until we reach that marker, about 35, 40 games till we reach that marker. Not panicking yet, would obviously love the Tigers to cool it down a little bit and for the Tribe to heat up even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, they're like the one thing that's interesting about them is, you know, their pitching has been better. I'd say it was the starting pitching was better in May. The bullpen was not as good as it was in April. One good sign, though, Clase looks like Clase again.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
Right. What I think I saw his ERAs like 108 in the last 3-4 weeks, something crazy like that.
I want to say it was like...
I know it's less than 2.
Right around 1 in the month of May. So that's good. They needed that to happen. That did happen.
I was getting worried there the first 2 months of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
First month and a half.
And poor Lane Thomas, he's just having the season from absolute hell. Now he's back on the injured list with plantar fasciitis. I think I'm saying that right.
I think you are too. It sounded good.
Yeah, okay. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm not. So anyway, it just sucks in this guy's free agent year. It's been so awful. I will say, and I know I'm a homer for this guy, one guy who also had a hell of a May was Carlos Santana. At age 39, still doing it, 262 average. He's got like a 11, as of this recording, 11-game hit streak of his own, and he's been real hot lately. And it's interesting to me that the guy, like, people are like, well, this, you know, the key contributors in this roster, Santana and Ramirez, are getting older, and they're the two guys who carried you for a good portion of May, and Kwan's still doing his thing. Now, Kwan always has this tendency where he gets off to insane starts in April.
Yeah, I always see the batting average at like 450. It feels like in April.
And he cools a little bit in May, but I'm not going to complain. In today's game, where its averages is kind of this forgotten thing, he's still hitting 310 as of this recording.
Yeah, and I mean, there's 2 other guys I wanted to shout out to. Angel Martinez has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he's
playing
cooled a
every
little
day.
bit the last couple weeks, but he's still been damn
clutch
good.
3-run shot he had. What was it, last week?
Yeah.
Big time. And then, obviously, my boy finally coming around. Nolan Jones has had a hot week. Week and a half,
I think
maybe.
Going into tonight's game in which he's not playing, 8 for his last 14, they needed that to happen. And, you know.
Yeah, I was praying on it.
I mean, you look, we know they thread the needle. We know they're not going to go get the top outfielder at the deadline. You know, last year Layton Thomas was up there. So maybe this year, again, we've mentioned this on last week's podcast, I think in the position they're at right now, if they continue doing what they're doing, you got to call up the Orioles and see Cedric Mullins. I think it'd be a perfect rental. You slot him into right field. Like, now, granted, if Nolan Jones starts taking off and hitting like crazy, it becomes less of a need. But on Cedric Mullins' worst day and Nolan Jones' best day, I'd still rather have Cedric Mullins.
Well, yeah, but even in that standpoint, you can throw Cedric Mullins in center, and then you've got Angel Martinez locking down one of the middle infield spots.
Right. Because
like I don't think there's any way you lose a Cedric Mullins deal.
No, I completely agree. I saw Jeff Passan wrote an interesting piece today, the ESPN Baseball Insider, and he wrote a piece basically talking about you have sure sellers, or who should absolutely sell, sure buyers, and then he had a long list of tweeners. He put the Guardians in the tweeners, and he basically wrote a column that wasn't all that favorable to the Guardians, criticizing them for having such a poor run differential, and he doesn't see how this is going to last, and he expects they'll fall out of it and end up trading Carlos Santana and Lane Thomas. My first criticism of that deal is, who the hell's trading for Lane Thomas at this point? My second criticism of that deal is, Jeff, they still do hold a wild card spot, and I know we're about a third of the way through this thing, and I know statistically it doesn't make sense that they're still as kind of good record-wise as they are. Statistically, it does not. All the metrics don't make sense for that to be the case. But don't forget, there's a certain somebody who's going to be an Akron Rubber Duck on Friday night, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, it
One
is.
Shane Bieber.
It is.
You get that back in the rotation, that's a game changer. David Fry
Yeah.
reappeared. We know he can't play the field. David Fry's bat last year against lefties, I mean, he was like a Rob Refsnyder type where he just smashed
Yeah,
the
he did.
hell out of lefties.
He hit righties well, too, last year.
Yeah,
it was just
really-
he hit lefties at just such an unreal clip.
Right, absolutely. So I think, to me, looking at this team right now, I think it's unfair to say that they should automatically sell the deadline. Now, if they have a horrible month of June, I can get on board with Passon's piece. But as of today, I'm like, I don't even think some of the key contributors of this team are even here right now. I mean, I'm still big on the idea of bringing up CJ Kafis. I think that ought to happen sometime soon. We've talked about that on this podcast. You wonder.
You wonder about the Lauder still.
I was just going to say that. You wonder with DeLauder. I know they want him to play some minor league games and prove that he could stay healthy for a little bit of a stretch, and I understand that. I actually don't even think that's a service time manipulation thing. One guy I am starting to get a little worried about is Manzardo. But, hey.
All the numbers but the average are still there.
Santana keeps hitting the way he is. Fry comes back, and he's somewhat as good as he was last year. You can carry Manzardo. He just might not be getting a lot of playing time.
Right. And I do want to make a small comment on the Jeff Passan piece. I will agree that the Tribe right now are tweeners. I would not consider them a contender. I wouldn't consider them a bottom feeder. Obviously, they're above 560 games into the year right now. But I disagree entirely with just like selling everybody right now. Selling Thomas, selling Santana. Well, as if anybody would buy Thomas, as you said. But I don't agree with that. I do agree with your point, though. If we start to see a slide come June, when's the actual deadline? End of June?
It's July. End of July.
End of July.
So
yeah, if
you
we
have
see that
2
slide,
months.
we've got 2 months to decide on what this team is, on whether you're going to make that decision on, hey, we're going to go for the playoffs this year, or, hey, we're going to sell some pieces, maybe get back a couple young players. But again, we're collecting all this young talent on this team. We still have yet to see what DeLauder can do. We've yet to see what Kafis can do. We haven't seen Bazana up here yet. Manzardo's still a question mark. Like, there's already a ton of young players on this team. I don't know what stacking this team with more young talent does, other than if that young talent ends up being good in 2 to 3 years, you end up trading it away again for key pieces at that point.
Right. I completely agree with you. And I also think it's a piece that obviously was written, with 2 months prior to the deadline. So I'm not going to hold the Jeff who wrote the piece to it. But you look at where they were last year, and then they kind of took off in June, and they had a real good July. And, obviously ended up being a great season, one that ended in very serious disappointment. But I look at it, it's like, okay, well, 2 years ago in 2023, they sold, and a lot of people were pissed, including me. And the clubhouse was pissed to the point where the president of baseball ops had to fly down to Houston and hold an impromptu team meeting. They were pissed they sold when they were 500. The clubhouse didn't respond well to it. Well, last year they bought, and the clubhouse responded great to it. And the guy they bought really stunk it up until it came to October baseball. And then he was
unbelievable.
Then he was a huge key piece that had one of the most memorable home runs in probably the last 25 years.
Maybe we'll see that again this year for him.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I think we all know who we're talking about here.
And looking at it in hindsight, I'll give them credit. They were smarter than I am. In 2023, they sold, and they probably should have. When they sold Bell and, sold Savali for Manzardo and all that.
I loved the Savali Manzardo deal at the time.
Yeah, I was not big on it. I remember that. You look smarter than me on that one. Not as smart as Chris Antonetti, though.
Well,
but,
correct.
Last year they bought, I'd say they bought 2 pieces. One, I'm going to say based on October alone, worked out beautifully in Lane. Cobb, it didn't really work out. He never was able to get healthy. I don't think he's even pitched a pitch for Detroit this year. Somehow his agent should get a round of applause and then some for getting him $15 million when he barely pitched last year.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
They bought last year, and I would hope that they do something similar again this year if things continue looking in the right direction. Obviously, big series right now against the AL East, leading Yankees. And I feel like, at least, I don't know if the players in the clubhouse feel it, but us, the fans, we play the Yankees, there's always there's more juice to be squeezed out of the orange.
Oh, there absolutely is. And we were at a game in Cleveland, I want to say probably about a month ago, and we were chatting with the Yankees fan about it, and I had brought to his attention, I was like, oh, the Yankees are totally one of our rivals, and he basically just laughed in our face because, yeah, every team that faces the Dodgers or the Yankees looks at that as a rivalry game because of that competitive advantage. You want to get over the hump and be the underdog story that beats that team. And he's like, "No, man, it's the Red Sox, and that's just about it."
Yeah,
he's like, that's it.
No, he was a very nice guy, very honest about it.
He was cool. He was cool to watch the game with too.
Absolutely,
One of the more pleasurable Yankees fans that I've ever been around.
And there's not many that you could say.
There's not.
I'm sure I'll get to see the more unpleasurable side as I wear my Carlos Santana jersey in the Bronx tomorrow evening.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And but listen, don't get swept in this series. The good thing is.
Yeah.
You were able to take 2 out of 3 at home, and I know that some people who listen to this podcast don't view those April games as important. They are, okay? And you took 2 out of 3 when they were here, so now the good thing is at the end of the year, just give me at least 1 in the Bronx this week, and then you split the season series, and I'll be somewhat content.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Just cannot get swept this week, and hopefully when we hear this or when this airs Thursday morning, we're 2-0 or at least 1-1.
Yeah,
hopefully
that'd be awesome.
Hopefully
that'd be awesome. All right, well, let's wrap things up and get out of here with some odds and ends. First of all, speaking of Travis Bazzana, you made reference to him.
Yeah,
he was the first overall pick. With the oblique, it's looking very, very unlikely we'll see him in the majors. Same can't be said for the 6th overall pick. The Royals bringing up Jack Caglione to the big leagues. The guy absolutely crushed everything in the minors at every level. Didn't last very long, not even a full calendar year. And I think this, to me, the Royals are one of the worst offenses in the MLB. I mean, they are dead last in home runs by, I want to say last I checked, by like 10 home runs on Sunday. I think they're bringing this up. This is more almost like a move of desperation and necessity. And also rewarding the kid who just crushed everything.
Oh, for sure. And I'm still wondering how he dropped to 6th overall. I feel like a guy who's that elite at hitting and that fantastic at pitching as well in college, I think he's one of those guys that should at least have been a top 5 pick. I think you could argue top 3. I think you could have made an argument for number 1 just based off of potential alone. I mean, he's the closest thing we've seen. And granted, it hasn't been a long time since Shohei has stepped to the big leagues, but he's the closest prospect we've seen to a player like that,
right,
being able to hit and pitch to that level. So the fact that he wasn't a top 3, let alone top 5 pick in this past draft still is mind-boggling to me. It'll be interesting to see if he gives that organization a boost with where they're at right now, but it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, for his sake, he sees the baseball the same way he's been seeing it at the minors.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully for his sake. Hopefully for us Guardians fans, he comes up and struggles. I mean.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but
that's why I said for his sake.
For Jack's sake, I hope he comes and tears it up. But it's interesting you mentioned that about that draft last year because a lot of people you heard said he should go 1, and then I think teams got kind of, I don't know why, scared off because they heard they might have won a big signing bonus, and then. Obviously, Nick Kurtz, who was in that draft, has already been crushing the ball for the A's.
Yep.
Condon, I haven't heard hide nor hair of him, but he's also in that the abyss
worst
of
organization in baseball
in
right
pro
now.
Sports, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in that abyss. So if that kid's able to overcome being a Colorado Rockies organization, that'll be enough said about that kid.
I think so too. And then we're still waiting to hear from that Burns kid.
And the other
from
pitcher
Cincy,
who the White Sox took. Don't really know much about them, but Kurtz is here. Caglione's here. Bazzana, I doubt
it's not going to happen this year.
Because the oblique. I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening. They won't. And the Guardians are also, let's face it, they're not. They could have the best prospects in the world, and they are a team that stays true
milk that
to their
service time.
belief. They're going to milk the service time. They run by the operation. They need X amount of minor league games at X level, and they don't come off of that for anybody.
No, they don't.
The last big prospect that was up to Bazzana's level was probably Lindor, and at the time, it's so weird to say now, we were cussing them out because they had Jose Ramirez at shortstop, and he was awful.
Yeah.
Awful in 2015, and finally he got demoted, and they did bring up Lindor, and at the time Urshela, which is crazy. He was a prospect.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see how that would have played out if the Tribe had stayed true to that. Like Urshela at third, Lindor at short, Jose's natural position of second base originally, but obviously that was taken by Kipnis at the time. We didn't really have any spot for him.
Right, and also like Jose was kind of like on his like 2016. He made the team out of necessity because they needed a utility guy, and he was willing to go.
With the injury to Michael Brantley, they needed somebody to step up.
Right, absolutely, and they needed something, and that was like kind of his last ditch effort. And then, oh, by the way, he's turned it into a Hall of Fame career. Essentially.
Yeah, and he will undoubtedly have a statue outside of Progressive Field.
I completely agree. So another odds and ends thing. Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau. I was kind of shocked by that one.
I was a little surprised. I had heard rumblings of fans saying, we need a new coach. We need what. I hadn't heard one thing about an inside source of that actually being a potential thing. So when I got that update, I was a little bit flustered.
Yeah,
I was. I was a little bit confused.
I was shocked too because like the Knicks were like in the desert wandering for 40 days and nights to, and to find basketball some type of semblance again. He brought that back to New York, and they were never able to get that championship. But, I mean, he got them as far as they had been in a quarter century this year. So it's interesting. I feel like in the NBA is becoming just as bad as hockey, where these coaches are just scapegoated. Like the smallest little thing happens.
Yep.
Look at a guy like Michael Malone. I mean, Denver won the championship so recently. The guy's on the street right now.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it doesn't
NBA
make sense.
And NHL and hockey, they scapegoat the hell out of these coaches.
They do, and it's going to be interesting to be watching Knicks games if the Knicks are up 20 with 3 minutes left, and Jalen Brunson might be on the sideline now.
Yeah, that'll be bizarre.
It'll be weird.
One more odds and ends thing. Pass rusher who was great for the Jets a couple of years ago, kind of didn't really do anything for the Eagles. Bryce Huff traded to San Francisco 49ers yesterday. So
also one more odds and ends thing. Did you see the Orlando Magic's new uniforms? Their rebrand.
Yes,
they went the full classic, the pinstripe classic with the star for the A. I loved those jerseys. I loved them back in the day, and I hope this is a huge thing for the Cavs to hopefully when they inevitably rebrand every 2 years, as they do every 5 years, typically the Cavs do.
Yeah.
Hopefully they go back to those 03 to 2010 uniforms. I think those are personally
my favorites.
A top 2 to top 3 favorite Cleveland sports uniform ever. It might even be number 1, especially those navy blues. They were so clean. So clean.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I love and you see a lot of people in our generation, people wear those pinstripe Magics like out on the street and stuff. I mean, they're really cool uniforms.
I have a Goga Batadze jersey of a pinstripe Magic jersey.
Do you?
Yeah.
Never seen you wear it. You have to bust that out
now. Yeah, it's busted out in the closet.
Yeah.
Goga Batadze.
Those are awesome. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Please make sure to follow, rate, and review this podcast. We appreciate it. And send us your thumbs up for your fellows here. Kevin, myself, and, of course, Derek for all his work behind the scenes. And you can follow us on all social media platforms at CLE Sports Realm. If you like to listen to this podcast, we are available Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube for your video service as well. Derek, great job. Thanks. Kevin, nice work out of you. We'll see everybody next week as I head off to the Bronx. Go Guardians.
Go Tribe.